Welcome back. So, this is going to be a bit of a build guide for you. What you had voted on, which was this, the Shortstop Quad Shock Knockout Blaster. This was highly requested. It did win out over the guitar. I'm not 100% done, but I believe we're at a stopping point now for anybody that wants to build it. So that's what this video is. We're going to do a bit of a build guide. So in its current state, we've removed the bottom storage. I just left it open. I know there's 3D printed files you can do. I tried doing it, but my printer doesn't quite work very well with that, with the current nozzle I'm running and filament I'm using. But in its current form, this works. This thing works actually really, really good. So I'm going to show you some numbers. Let's head out to the garage so I can actually put it through the chronograph, and we'll meet back up here at the desk and we'll talk about it. Let's go. Okay, so that's what we're looking at. We're in the highs of, 93-ish to lows of, mid-80s. There was a couple of little outliers. I do believe that it might have been the dart, because a lot of times when I run all four, I'll get like 92, 92, 87, 88 pretty consistently. So this is a really good shield buster, and it is so much better. The plunger volume is good, and this is stock internals. There is nothing upgraded about this. I have not put any additional sealing in it. It has been relubricated. That was about it. And obviously there's no spring upgrade. This is just stock plunger and the AR from this being combined. That's literally it. And it's good where it is. I personally wouldn't change it, because we all know that megas don't tend to perform very well with high FPS numbers. So from here, let's talk about how I built it. So starting here, we have the AR and the plunger tube from the Knockout in its bare bones form. And you have to do a little bit of testing and marking with a Sharpie. I did find that the back end of the AR does need to be cut off. You can see my Sharpie line that I have. It's almost in line with the prongs that are sticking out from the AR. Once we've removed that, this section here will need to be flush all the way across. I'll point at it here with a red arrow. So once we get to the plunger tube, this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. We have 4 initial cuts all the way around the tube itself. These are to align with the AR. The AR is a very unique shape. So these are some of the markings that I was made when trying to line up where everything was going to slot together. So after marking out the sections that we need to cut out of the plunger tube, I highly suggest using a Dremel. There are some bits you can actually get that are very good for this. Anything that can just remove material quickly will work just fine, and then go through it with an X-Acto knife to kind of shave them down as needed. Now, when you get all of this actually cut and slightly finished up, they should actually slot together and hold mechanically. You can see here in this image how everything kind of lines up and why it needs to be cut the way that it does. Now, you don't have to go in this route. You don't have to be this perfectionist about it. But my thing was I needed it to mechanically lock. It's for stability. It's to make sure that it's not going to snap off. It's not going to have to rely on the glue or epoxy to hold it all together. And they're less likely to want to crack or break with use. Here we can see a little bit of the shell cutting that needs to be done as well, yet again to fit some of the prongs. And you can see that the line I took was just above the text. And I mean, it is literally 1 or 2 millimeters above that text. Another thing that we need to mention is that the first 2 rival attachment rail at the top also have to be cut to fit these prongs. From here, we can kind of see a little bit of the epoxy work that needed to be done. So you have to fill in all of the gaps. You can use hot glue if you don't have or you don't feel comfortable using the epoxy. I will also point out at the top, you can see why I needed to notch back the AR, and it was mostly to clear this screw post right here. And from that point, it leads us to here. So everything here is now one piece. There is no way to remove this. This is 100% permanently locked. And I've gone through and actually sanded down a lot of the epoxy. Now, something else that you will need to do, because of the way this is going to have a big opening in here, and it's actually important because when I went to epoxy all of this, I needed access to the inside to make sure there wasn't epoxy that could break off, or, you know, in this case, maybe glue if you were to, say, be using hot glue or something like that. It was a way to pack it down and to be able to smooth it out. Later, I actually used just a piece of plastic, you know, from another shell. I don't even remember what it was from. And I just trimmed it down, filed it a little bit more like a wedge shape, and it actually fit in this little lip that you'll have on the AR. So that little gap can get filled, and then you can epoxy around it or glue around it and fill it in. From there, this is where it gets kind of interesting because you do need to have, you know, a little bit of a assembly, because this has to be assembled in a very particular order. First, we'll start with this half of the shell. The first thing you're going to have to do is you actually have to slightly turn all of this around, so that way this post right here on the AR can snake around the back side over here where the rail that you cut off is located. So it needs to come around this side, and then it can actually slot into place. So the first shell is already located like it needs to. We'll put this little lock back in. And when you have to assemble the other one, it's the same thing, but this shell needs to now tuck underneath this prong or post right here. And then it just goes back together and assembles like normal. And I'll go ahead and I'll screw all this together with movie magic. And bam, it's completely screwed back together. So that's basically it to have yourself a nice little shield buster. I do want to point out this, and I have this image right here. It does fit into the deploy stock, similar to a holster, kind of like what Nathan had showed on his quad shock. So if you do want a holster, yes, deploy stocks work fantastic. So from here, I do have more to go. There's more that I want to do with this. I have some things in the works. I have some things in the mail. I'm still waiting for those to come in and eventually work a little bit further on to do more of the cosplay version of this. But for here, I think this is great. I think this is 100% something that people would want as a nice little pepper shooter to shield bust or take out special zombies or anything like that. It fires great. It's a nice form factor, and I absolutely love it. I love where this went. Stay tuned. I do have more in the works. I have more projects that I am currently working on. We will try to do a little bit more. The guitar is going to have to wait a little bit. Yet again, it's similar reasons what's holding this up from going any further. Thank you all for stopping by. I hope this video was informative for you, and that if you choose to do this, you have as much luck and you enjoy the blaster that you make, because I absolutely love this thing. I think it is amazing. Thank you for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey, if you made it this far, you're awesome. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and come check me out over on Twitch to keep up to date on my current mods I'm working on. I hope to see you there sometime.